T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Low Gravity. I am your host, Jonathan Calmus, CEO and co-founder of Cosmic. Today's a pretty special day. We are sitting here in Medellin in an event called Smart Capital, which has been really, really useful so far. And I'm sitting here with one of Cosmic's investors as well, from CLIN Fund and Chile Global Ventures, Jamie Riggs. Hello.
Hello, Jonathan. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. It wasn't an invite as much as a gun to your head, but it's all right. This has been the general theme. Everyone that's on this, I force them into being on it.
Surprise attacks.
Yes, always about the surprise attack, the startup way. Jamie, the reason I wanted to have you on today specifically is because, in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people hold the same opinion, you kind of revolutionized Chile's investment scene, is the reality. At a time where everyone was pushing on language more than anything, and keeping the culture locally alive, which I totally understand and appreciate, you looked at it through new eyes. So before we start talking about that, give us a little background. How did you end up in Chile? Who's Jamie?
Great. Thanks again, Jonathan. So yes, so I've been in Chile 6 years. Before that, I'm originally from the U.S., born and raised in North Carolina, moved to California after undergrad, worked in stocks, selling tech stocks, my first job until a little after .com. I went back to do my MBA. I worked mainly doing M&A finance for technology companies in the Bay Area, then finally found my calling, if you will, to work with early stage startups when I landed at Silicon Valley Bank. When I did my MBA though, I had an opportunity to do exchange program, and I went to Chile, exchange program in Adolfo Ibáñez.
Okay.
And that's where I remember the actual day I was in the beach in Tangoy, on a local beach in Chile. And that was the day I realized I wanted to be in venture capital. I wanted to help entrepreneurs out. And I want to do it in LATAM.
What about that specific moment resonated you? Why did you have the epiphany then?
I don't know. I mean, I was, kind of going back to grad school looking for my new path. I liked that idea of venture capital. It seemed like it was really interesting working with entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. And so to be close to entrepreneur was really, if I was going to help anybody out, those are the type of people I want to help out, accomplish their dreams. I also, at that time, I was reading a book by Mark Andreessen. Mm-hmm. And at the same time I was reading the book, when I was on the beach, I said, everybody's doing this in Silicon Valley, everybody's doing this in certain places, but in Latin America, figure out there could be I could help out a lot more. So, but anyway, that happened when I was doing my MBA. I came back to the US, and I really got into what I call my venture capital school, Silicon Valley Bank. I really understand the investors' mindset, entrepreneurs' challenges. And with that, I came to Chile 6 years ago and trying to help implement some of this Silicon Valley culture in Santiago, what makes sense. Not all of it makes sense there, but I try to implement what I think is the best practices.
Yeah, I agree with that. I spent some time in Santiago too. That's how we met. Mm-hmm. Cosmic was in the Startup Chile program. And I agree with that. It's, as much as I would love to just copy and paste Silicon Valley, crazy high growth culture, sometimes you just have to kind of play with the pieces how you have them, and not all of the pieces fit together. But that's been a struggle of mine for a while, is the truth, because I think that's the root of most of the culture clashes that I feel internally within our teams a lot of times. Is it's not a matter of intention or if it's a good person or a bad person or anything like that. It's more just seeing the world in different ways. Mm-hmm. So what have been some of your struggles to actually implement faster growth things? What are some of the things you do like out of Latin American and Chilean culture for the startup scene?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the things that you hope to be a medium of change for?
The things I like about the Chilean ecosystem, I think Chileans naturally are entrepreneurs. A lot of people are doing a lot of different things. I think one of the main challenges we have is when we find a good entrepreneur, helping them focus in choosing the project, not trying to be 3 or 4 projects. So, we know if they do 3 projects, nothing's going to be world class.
Did you feel the same with Cosmic at all? Because this is also an internal conversation we always have. Are we doing too many things at the same time?
It wasn't. We looked at it from that standpoint. We looked at the challenge that Cosmic has to pivot and to stay on path, and we have faith in that, as we have faith in you guys.
Thank you.
But I think it's more about when people are doing a number of things that are not connected.
Okay.
That's what I mean by that point, where you have an entrepreneur who said, okay, I'm CEO of this company, but I'm very active in this company. I'm in multiple different companies at the same time, which most likely none of those companies are going to be anything relevant. And
unless you're Elon Musk.
Yeah,
but it takes.
But Elon Musk already has his.
Yeah, exactly.
Already has his. He's already gone through that process.
Yeah,
and he's had his unicorn, if you will, with PayPal, and he had his capital to go out and build these teams, and also Elon's a unique individual,
an exceptional person.
So I think that's one of the challenges. We do implement our entrepreneurs to present English. We do implement a lot of things like that because I think I got resistance when we first started doing it, but I think if we're going to work with an entrepreneur, they need to be able to thinking globally,
yeah.
Day one. And if they can't speak in English, if they can't present in English, then we need to find someone on their team where we know that's going to be a challenge. Then maybe their only market is Latin America and Spain. But we want to know that early on. So that's part of the reason we try to push a lot of things through English. And yeah, I think also when the entrepreneurs are presenting and doing things in English, generally in Latin America or international, it just shows a level of sophistication for an entrepreneur. Different. And I think it's, from an investor standpoint, I think it just looks more sophisticated because we know that most of the exits in the future are probably going to come from U.S., Asian, maybe European companies,
which are all English speaking.
It's the international language, so that's what we're given.
It's it's a very good point, and it may seem really small. A few years ago, I don't remember, I think I was reading like an NLP book, a neurolinguistics programming book or something, and I had read that language is the foundation of culture, and that they're so highly connected to each other that if you move to a new place and you don't take the time to learn enough of the language, it's more than just being disconnected because you can't, physically communicate with someone. It's being disconnected because you can't connect with them. You can't actually understand their perspective and mentality. Latin America is a really interesting place because almost every country has its own jargon, its own version of Spanish. Yeah, its own version of Spanish, exactly. Nuances is the word I was looking for. And I think to a certain degree, because Latin America is very traditional, it almost feels like losing yourself. I hope I'm not talking for other people right now because I'm not a Latin American, but just from my observations, I can see that many times it's not comfort because it's easier to speak in Spanish. It's comfort because it's your comfort. The same way, that same dish that your mom used to cook you makes you comfortable in the moment. And part of being an entrepreneur is learning how to break those comforts and break out of your zone, like we all learn, and figuring it out. So I think it was probably a tremendous help to a lot of people who don't even realize how big of an impact such a small change was. But language in general is a very interesting thing. I do want to talk more about your past because you have a really cool story, at least from my perspective. Growing up, you worked on a farm, right?
I did.
A pig farm.
I worked on, my dad did have pigs, but I mainly worked in, tobacco.
Tobacco, yes,
my
that
dad
was
had
it.
tobacco patches.
And your uncle had a pig farm.
And my uncle had
Okay.
But my dad had pigs as well, a few pigs. So I grew up in a family of farmers.
Okay.
My dad, that's why I say he was an entrepreneur. He, I would say, was a millionaire 3 times over. Became a millionaire, lost $1 million, won $1 million, lost $1 million. and retired as a millionaire. So, and it was all because he was an entrepreneur, and he worked really hard from when he was in high school. He was an individual, something I usually don't talk about, but he was an individual who wasn't able to play sports in his high school because he had to be home to work on his farm, on his father's farm. So from an early age, as soon as he finished high school, never went to college, had his own farm. He was very successful. And then some natural things happened, natural disaster, and he lost the farm at that point. So when I was growing up at an early age, I had no option.
You had to work.
From the early ages of 7 to 8 years old, I was working on the family farm. And I really appreciate that now, that work ethic that I learned from being early age, the appreciation of working with your hands, doing physical labor. I never take it for granted now.
At the time, how did you feel about that, being so young and kind of being in labor?
You don't really think about it because it's your culture. Everybody had done it before.
Yeah.
And had siblings, older siblings who were doing it as
Who
well.
were already working on it.
And so that was just part of the day. And I mean, when I turned 16 and I had my driver's license, I never worked on the farm again. Not necessarily I enjoyed it, but I appreciated it.
But you appreciated it.
Yeah.
And they're different things. That's so cool. I can see your book already. The Farmer VC, something like that. It's great. It's really cool. When you were in Silicon Valley is always kind of an interesting place. And to be honest, I never lived there. I spend a lot of time there, but I always made sure that Los Angeles or somewhere else was my place, because it can feel very claustrophobic at times. It's everyone's hustling around you. Everyone's trying to achieve that same goal. Even if you're not in competition with someone, it feels like you're in competition with them many times. It kind of has similar but different vibes than New York, I would say, if I had to classify it in some way. And everyone's a guru in Silicon Valley as well. Everyone is the prophet to the direction of where you want to go. So there was this transitionary period. You took study abroad in Chile. You came back to Silicon Valley. And did you really sell yourself on the idea of moving to Chile at that moment on the beach? Or was it more when you got back to Silicon Valley and started feeling its vibes again?
No, so before I was based in Los Angeles.
Okay.
When I went and did my MBA, I was based in LA. And then after my MBA, after my experience in Chile, I got a promotion, and then
that's when you moved
me
there.
to San Francisco, to the Bay Area. And so when I was in the Bay Area for those 6-7 years, I really was, like I was saying, it was a learning process. I really enjoyed the culture at that time. I think Silicon Valley's changed some in the since I've been here. It's changed quite a bit, but I really enjoyed the culture in San Francisco at the time. It was seemed to be a very helpful culture. People were very open.
Yeah.
I mean, any coffee shop you go to.
The ecosystem definitely is the value of the...
you're sitting around a coffee table, and every table there's a conversation going about raising a capital or their startup or so on and so forth. It can be a little bit too much sometimes. I mean, sometimes you want a break to talk about something else. However, though, for me as a student of the industry, it was great. And I miss it sometimes. I miss that dynamic that everybody's thinking... 3 worlds out in the future. Everybody's thinking big, and it's something that we're trying to implement more here in Chile and Latin America. But your question is about the transition to Chile?
Yeah, my question was more. Well, I was taking it more from my perspective. I had thought that you had already lived in Silicon Valley before you got there. So, all right. So you get to Chile, you have this epiphany, then you get the job at Silicon Valley Bank, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But my when I was thinking about the beach, I was thinking I was going to do entrepreneur, I was going to do VC, but I want to do it in Latin America. And I actually thought when I was at Silicon Valley Bank, there was a possible opportunity in Brazil, or it could be something in Mexico. I didn't know it would be in Chile per se. I had personal relationships. That's the end reason why I ended up in Chile, why it helped me receive the opportunity. But I thought most likely it would happen in Brazil, because of the size of the market, opportunities. But then the phone call came from Chile, and that started that opportunity.
Aside from the personal relationships, looking back, are you happy that you picked Chile over another market? Brazil and Mexico are really, really advanced in the Latin markets right now.
It's hard to separate work and personal life for me.
Yeah.
Because we really live and work, 24/7 a lot of times. So I'm really happy about my decision. Because I do have a wife and 2 kids, and to have support from my family there is huge. To try and do the same thing in Brazil, Mexico, which I wouldn't have that support, would be that much more challenging from a family standpoint.
Definitely. Today, the theme at Smart Capital is all about raising money, hopefully teaching people how to raise money, but also I got another theme today too, actually. It was not necessarily just how to raise money, but it's also the really fundamental parts of a business that are the reasons you raise money and the flow of how you get from, as many people put it, 0 to 1, etc. What are your general takeaways if you had to give one or two pieces of advice to an entrepreneur who's hustling and trying to raise some money?
First advice, always go back to the cap table, your ownership, especially if you're early on. If you're in early stage, be really mindful about how much equity you give away at an early stage. Hopefully the company's going to be successful, and you as an entrepreneur, you definitely want to have a relevant percentage of the company, so you're investable for the future. And that relates for the second point, is trying to find smart people that will invest in your company, that have invested in the past, and doing the due diligence. Sometimes I don't think entrepreneurs, I'm not sure, but I don't think entrepreneurs do their due diligence.
On the investors themselves.
Yeah. So like, for example, when we're investing in Cosmic Go, hopefully Jonathan called up 2 or 3 other entrepreneurs we've invested in, asked their opinion about CLIN and Chile Ventures and Jamie and Manuel and the team that we have. I think that's super important to do for an entrepreneur to do due diligence. Okay, if you encounter somebody who's interested in investing in your company, okay, have you done it before? If you haven't, then that's different. But if you have done it before, first thing I'll be doing is calling who they've invested into, trying to see what their experience is. Another part is, if when you're doing early stage, angel investing and so forth, I think it's important to ask too, what is the time commitment? Because when you're early stage, you really need help. Very early stage, you really need a lot of people to roll up their sleeves and help out. And sometimes entrepreneurs go raise capital from an angel investor. Okay, wow, then they think they're going to
And the money runs out.
But money runs out. But the point is that hopefully you had a discussion with the investor before, said, okay, how much time can you dedicate? What's going to be your value add? Are you going to be able to make contacts? Are you going to be able to go to meetings with me? What are you going to do to help me out besides the money? So hopefully you have options for money. I know it's not that simple sometimes, but hopefully you have a number of options, and you really could do due diligence and choose the right person. And the third thing is, I would just, when you're out fundraising, this is a different concept, but I really try to have a lot of meetings when you don't need money.
Yes. That's the best advice I could give.
So
when you need money, it changes the it's this weird thing. You know, it's really funny. I'll relate it back to this. When I was dating my ex-girlfriend, all of a sudden I became the most attractive man in the world. And then when we broke up, all of a sudden that vibe, that essence in the universe, or someone goes, okay, well, he's non-attractive anymore. And it's really similar when you're raising money. As funny as that metaphor is, when you need money and you're hustling and you're going out there, the money does not show up. And when you're more relaxed, you're more strategic, and you take some of the advice you're giving, like you do due diligence on your investor, and you remind yourself that it's a filtration process for your company to them as much as them to you, investing in your company.
Exactly.
Things move a lot better. And I think probably subconsciously, I don't think an investor will ever say like, hey, did you do due diligence on us? But I think subconsciously the investors get vibes of how the startup is interacting with their firm, and the types of questions they're asking, and the speed at which they're trying to do things. And in startup land, there's always this balance where you need speed, but you can't demonstrate desperation. And it's one of the biggest, desperation in general ruins opportunities completely. The more that you want something from someone, the less usually they want to give it to you. And so it's almost like this Zen moment. How do you achieve that Zen moment where you can go in there? And your last piece of advice is fantastic. When you don't need the meetings, that's when you should be taking the meetings.
And one additional part on that is, if the more interactions you can have with investors and not meetings, standpoints, how often can you go out and have a coffee, or go have lunch, or if you have a beer, in interactions that are not in the office, they have 30 minutes to an hour to present. Whatever my recommendation is, whatever you could do that's different, to interact with investors, to build a relationship. Because at the end of the day, as I always tell the Chileans, it's polyandro or dating process. From both standpoints, as an investor, I won't be dating you to see if we're a good fit, if we're going to get this marriage, if we're going to have this marriage. And you should be doing the same as an investor. From an entrepreneur standpoint, entrepreneur should be dating me to see, is Jamie going to be a good fit? Is he going to be a good spouse? Is he going to be able to deliver?
It's only funny because I'm looking at you in the eyes, so it feels like you're actually talking.
The first thing I said when I came in today, I said, no kissing.
No kissing. That's
hugging, no kissing.
All right, fine. Jamie, I know you're really busy. I super appreciate this. I hope that someone listening takes something away from this and learns something. It's not an easy path to grow a business from both perspectives. And I think that a lot of people see VCs and the fundraising world as walking checkbooks and kind of walking dollar signs. And it's not that at all. As you pointed out, it's very human. You want to try to interact with people outside of the office environment. You want to have a beer. You want to build a relationship. Today, were you in the session with Agenda?
I was.
And I really liked what their CEO said, Andres, that if you plan to raise money, it's a 1.5 year long path. It's not a 5-minute, you engage with someone today and tomorrow they sign the documents and send the check. Not at all. It's something that takes a lot of patience. It's a process that's extremely human because it's full of, blockers and just stumbling things along the way that you didn't necessarily know you needed to account for. And it represents life like any other process. There's the ups and the downs and everything else. And if you emphasize the human part of it and the relationship part of it, someone will see you. Because the famous line that all investors say, and I learned this very early on, is investors invest in people, not in companies. And most of us forget that along the way. Most of us say, okay, our KPIs have to be perfect. I can never demonstrate any failures. I have to be, this meta-human at all times. And it's just not that. And I think one thing that worked really much in our favor, Jairo and I, we like to show the dirty laundry because the dirty laundry reinforces the positivity that's happening as well. It shows that there's a path to it. Until I started internet marketing and growth hacking, you'd hear all of these crazy overnight growth stories. And then when you start digging into the actual data, you see that the hockey stick is actually more of a roller coaster. When you're in the micro, it's a roller coaster. When you're in the macro, it's the hockey stick. So if you zoom out, all of a sudden you see this beautiful, perfect story where Uber became this monster overnight, or Facebook. Uber's a 9-10-year-old story. Didn't happen overnight at all. In fact, it was full of a lot of difficulties in the beginning. And most companies are like that. So anyway, you're heading back to Chile right now for something really amazing. I'm not going to say it. I'll let you say it eventually, but congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your support.
Of course.
It's
Thank you,
been
Jonathan.
awesome working with you and with CLIN Fund and Chile Global. And hopefully I'll see you next time in Chile.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jamie. Bye. For any entrepreneurs out there that's interested in the Latin American, specifically Chilean startup ecosystem, looking to raise money and looking for an incredible group of investors and support, go to chileglobalventures.cl. Again, that's www.chileglobalventures.cl. If you're interested in launching your own micromobility fleet, go to www.cosmicgo.co.